So when I do this, because I usually, I do this, I had, 20, 30 people in a room, sometimes at some of the conferences I've done this at. So I'll ask a lot of times about, if you've done any group work in your courses, face-to-face, online, hybrid, blended, whatever you want to call it, because it helps figure out where you're at and what you've done and what kinds of experiences you've had. So Naja, I don't know if you've done any. I'm trying to remember if you did any in the online courses, but I know you teach other courses as well.
In regards to
group work.
Oh, definitely. Not so much online with Oswego in regards to group work, but more of the face-to-face and online with other institutions, but not with Oswego.
Okay. Okay, Roger, do you do any group work with your
students? Yeah, I'm actually planning a major group project this semester. Ooh. Bigger than like any I've done before. So this is really timely.
This is really timely. Okay, awesome.
By the way, a technical question.
Yes.
Since I don't use the QR thing that often, does something that I download like this just now just stay there, or where does it go?
It should allow you to it should take you to the link, to the bit.ly link.
Okay, I mean, it's taking me through these.
Yeah, I think that's
folders.
Yep. Well, I think there's just a couple of files in there.
If there's a bit.ly link, I'll save that.
Right. Because the bit.ly link there, right. That's all the different. I just have like 5 different files in there.
Okay, so yeah. One of those is the bit.ly link.
Right. Well, the bit.ly link is right on the front page. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd have to write it down.
But I can always send it to you.
Yeah, no,
I
that's
can
all
always
right.
send it to you. It's not
okay. No, I thought it was a link.
It's supposed to be, but
yeah.
I haven't done it in a while, so.
Okay.
All right, so let's go to this. All right, so one of the things I had been looking at, because John Kane had asked us to look at some different things, particularly with group work, was I really tried to do a lit review. It was not all-inclusive, but I really tried to get to the heart of what I thought would be helpful. And so our research does suggest that both faculty and students dislike group work. And these different complaints are pretty broad throughout, whether it's faculty or students. But scheduling difficulties, group member participation, which we know that's a huge issue, and of course conflicts within the group. So with some of the other things too, is the research is talking about just how valid it is to do group projects in any type of a course. So when you're thinking about how this helps them, it really can help them in so many different ways. Yes, it can help them with those interpersonal skills, but it can also help them with the content, if you think about it, because one way for an individual to know that they're grasping that content is to be able to teach somebody else or to be able to explain those concepts to somebody else, especially if one of their peers are struggling. But the other thing is too, is that the problems that are being faced by students and faculty in virtual teams are very, very similar to that face-to-face. The research also suggests the importance of instructor participation. And I think that in my own experiences in online group works, that is a critical component because I really think that helps with the success of the group. And then the other thing too, and this provides relevance for students, because a lot of times students think, oh, this is just busy work, there's no real reason for me to do this, but there is value by prospective employers on what kinds of skills the students learn in group work, regardless of modality. So this is from 2017. This is from the National Association of Colleges and Employers. This is their top 10. I haven't been able to find an updated one for NACE, but what I do want, I did some quick scanning of some different authoritative websites that talk about the skill sets that employers are looking for. And these these ones that are on the screen, they still are looking at in various orders. The analytical skills, communication skills, interpersonal skills, leadership skills, positive attitude, the ability to work in teams, and then they were talking about 2 other types of technical skills. So the technical skills focus on things like analysis, project management skills, technical writing, the ability to use social media, and even if possible, some coding and programming skills. But they're also looking, when they're talking about technical skills, they're also talking about computer skills. So there's things like email, social media, blogging, a little bit of graphic design, of course, word processing, the ability to use spreadsheets, databases, and even some IT troubleshooting. So they're really looking for a variety of skill sets. And teamwork or group work can help with some of those various aspects. And so we can even, if you have questions about that, we can talk about how we can make those things happen if you're looking for a specific set of skills. So in the majority of the articles I went through, this was seemed to be a recurring piece. It seemed to be that if we include the types of things we would do for project management, that really helps them because we're not necessarily teaching them project management, but those skills and how to work through with projects are beneficial, and that goes back to what the employers are looking for. So based on some of that, I went through and tried to figure out, okay, so how do we build these types of projects that allow students to practice various types of skills, but also making sure they align with your overarching course outcomes and the goals. And again, we need to provide students with a clear and or explicit expectations of outcomes and assignments. So of course, rubrics are very, very helpful. And remember, a rubric doesn't necessarily have to be a table. It can also be a series of bulleted lists. Because again, sometimes that's an easier way to visualize it, depending on, I think, the content, depending on the subject matter. So there's several different ways. Now, there's research looking particularly at graduate courses, and there's research looking at undergraduates. I was trying to focus more on undergraduates because that's where a majority of my work in course development is going. However, I also did look at some of the research for graduate courses because, again, we do have graduate programs, and so that helps inform my practice as far as how I can help faculty in that area. So instructors setting up the groups really can work well for like your 100, 200 level students, maybe even 300 level students, because then you can guide them through the process. You can have them do a skills inventory. So for example, as you look at your assignment, what types of skills are needed as far as, leadership skills, writing skills, communication skills, all of those different things. So they can kind of assess where they're at. But however, in a graduate course, you would probably let the group self-select, but still have them do the skills inventory because that helps them see. And if you're dealing with students at the graduate level in particular, or even the undergraduate level, who are bringing real-world experience because they're non-traditional students, all the better. Because then you have a real mix in there, and then your traditional students have an opportunity to learn from your non-traditional students in, I'd say, about 50% of the cases, because it really depends.
So this is like partly about providing balance in the groups.
You can, yeah, you might want to.
They're not in competition with each other necessarily, but you want, yeah, I mean, if you do it randomly, you're going to have like some groups that are sensational and some that are terrible.
That's right, that's right. So for you as the instructor,
people in those two groups don't really learn all that much.
Right, but if you as an instructor opt, particularly like I said, the undergraduate level, and keep in mind too, in the real world, most of the times, we're thrown into team situations.
Right.
We don't often have the opportunity to choose our team if we're working on some kind of project.
I've found that it's usually better to assign people rather than just have them, group with their friends.
And sometimes it's depending on the course too, it can really make sense too to group them in so much as if you truly do have a mixed course where you have traditional and non-traditional students, it may make sense to group your traditional students and your non-trads together because your traditional students may not be as easy for them to be flexible. Whereas with our non-traditional, because we have those different life experiences, it's a lot easier. And I say we because I've been a non-trad for many years. So I still look at myself in that vein, especially since I started that program. So And this semester, supposedly, there's a group project in one of my classes.
Yeah. When those non-trads finish, they're going to be doing group work in
Yes.
companies somewhere with people who are 20 years younger than them.
Right, and I don't, it's not so much of that. It's more because sometimes it's really difficult because if you're traditional students, they're all looking for, say, meeting at 11 o'clock at night.
Right.
Your working person is going to say, okay, time out, guys. So it's finding those flexibilities. And I'm just throwing out different ideas. There's no right or no wrong. It's just it works in a specific context. The other thing that's really helpful too is when you do that skills inventory, again, some of those students can model those behaviors for others. So in some cases, one of the last times I did a group project was in a graduate level course, and we all brought different things to the project, but what was really cool is that we were able to see how we felt our strengths were. And so I was the project manager because I had some project management experience, but I was able to help a couple of my classmates who were interested in being able to do that, look at some things differently and provide them with resources so that they could eventually do that on their own. And so some of those behaviors were really allowed me to
model, you mean like role model?
Modeling, and if you think about when you're working like with children and you want them to do something a certain way, sometimes we'll model that behavior for them. So it's sometimes that too. It's seeing how somebody does something, but also kind of too could be sort of like a mentor, because sometimes somebody has those skills that we would like to have that could benefit us personally and professionally. So those are the people we might gravitate to, saying, hey, I'm interested. I've had some people, online come to me and ask me, hey, I'm interested in instructional design. Could you kind of be a mentor? And, okay, sure. So it's just a lot of times it's just conversation. But anyway, it could be very similar things in a project management situation where your student who maybe has those leadership skills and have consistently demonstrated them could be a mentor to some of the others in the group who really want to figure out ways to get those skills or to hone those skills.
As recommended that you make the skills inventory available to all members of the group?
Absolutely. Absolutely, because it's a self-assessment. So I may say to you, I think I have good leadership skills. I think, I have these other skills, but somebody else in the group may not, they may rank themselves a little lower on the leadership skills, but maybe they have phenomenal writing skills. So you can find how all the roles can be assigned within a team. And again, you don't necessarily, students don't necessarily have to have a leader that, is authoritative and puts everything in there, but it's more of a give and take. But still, somebody has to be that one that reports out for the different milestones and where you are in the completion process. So those are some different things to think about, and I'll talk about more probably in some of the coming slides. One of the other things too that the research suggests is that we don't do a really good job of providing relevance to our students as to why reports are important. So by showing them things like what NACE is looking for, what other trade industry groups are looking for, can be a really good way for students to see, oh, okay, not only is it relevant for this course, but here's what it does for me in the real world. So providing short articles on why teamwork and virtual teamwork is important. This is one I found, and I thought it was well written, called Coping with Hitchhikers and Couch Potatoes on Teams. That's the title. You can Google the title. I did not download it because it's not mine, but that's the title. And it's really well written in the sense that it's really geared towards students. And it's kind of amusing and a little bit funny, but they'll be able to see what's in there and be able to relate to it if they've worked in group work before and had these things happen. And there are many other online resources as well. The other thing that can be beneficial is for students to understand the team formation process, which is forming, norming, storming, performing. And each one has their own different things. And storming obviously is that point where they're butting heads. And that's where they think a lot of times that they're not performing properly or something's wrong. because there's a lot of conflict. But I think it's important that students know that this is part of the process and that having disagreements are normal. And this can be a really great place for them to learn how to deal with conflict. So some of the other things you can do is you can have the students create a group charter. And if you're familiar with project management, that is one of the things they do. There is a group charter that talks about, you know, who's going to be the team lead or the manager, who are the team members, what are the principles of the team, for example, how decisions will be made, how issues are accounted for, what's going to be documented, how the team will communicate, and other team expectations. So basically the team norms. This way everybody knows that primary communication is through this channel. That when we have conflict, this is how we're going to work through it. And that's, and particularly with conflict, that's something that I think the instructor can really help with. And I have some tips and tricks with that as well that could be really helpful. So, and again, as far as the group learning process, you know, having them do a skills inventory, again, it goes back to what I said before, it helps them see who can do what. But it also can allow them to see, oh, well, if Joe does this well, you know, I really want to learn how to do that. So maybe he and I can have a conversation and we can kind of work on that together. Again, it depends on student motivation too. And I know that's a whole different set of research and stuff like that. And you can, the other thing you can do too, or within the teams, they can do something like where they can outline skills that students may have the opportunity to learn or teach. So again, this could go either way. The research seems to be leaning more toward letting the team choose their lead and who should fill other roles. I think, again, I think it really depends. And I think it depends on what you're looking for as the instructor, but also I think it depends on the makeup of the teams. But you can certainly, as the instructor, say, here's what I would recommend. And actually, in one of my last graduate courses where we had teamwork, we did not have the option to choose our teams. We were assigned teams. Our instructor made a recommendation who should be the project manager, and we wound up not going with that choice, but the instructor was fine with that because, again, he might not have known the strengths of the full team.
Mm-hmm. Is there something about the roles coming up?
It really depends on the type of project. Because, for example, if it's a multimedia project, then you're going to need, you're going to have somebody who maybe have to focus on scripting, or someone who's going to focus on doing the actual video, and then you need editing skills and all of these other things. And I use that as an example because I think there was a couple of courses at SU that I was writing documentation for to help them. It was actually a college strategies course. And the instructor had students do podcasts and videos. Mm-hmm. So I was writing instructions on those kinds of things and the different things that they want to take into consideration. And also in teaching at SU, my final project for my students was a video of reflecting on their teaching practices. So it was, it was just keeping things really simple. Mm-hmm. But again, if it's some kind of a paper, it could be depending on what the different sections are. Maybe one student has a really strong interest in this particular area and another in this area, or maybe a couple in this area. So as a team, you figure out how do you divvy up all that work. So there's no right or wrong. You can make recommendations as the faculty, or you can say, this is how it's going to be. I mean, it's truly up to you. Mm-hmm. This can be really helpful, but there's all different kinds of problems that students can have working in teams. One of the things we had to do, now granted, this was a graduate level course. This was 600, 700 level course. But we created our own spreadsheet with the problems we had and how we resolved them. Mm-hmm. But there can be, I haven't really looked, but I'm going to guess there are probably things out there that could kind of be a guide to help a faculty member provide this kind of information for students. Here's how you might resolve this. Here's how you might resolve this. And so like lynda.com, for example, provides different things on conflict resolution. There's quick reads on how to resolve conflict. And then one big thing though is really the specifics on how you as the instructor will get involved and moderate. Because there has to be a certain level where it escalates to where you have to get involved. Mm-hmm. Just like what happened in the real world anyway. Because you would have, the consequences are different, yes, but still in the real world there would be some kind of involvement of a supervisor or one of the stakeholders or multiple stakeholders in a project. So, but that really helps students then at least feel, okay, we have a process. These are the steps we need to go through in order to try to resolve. And then if we can't, then we can at least ask our instructor to help us through this process. I think that's one of the things that students find the most frustrating is, and I saw this indicated in some of the pieces of literature I read, where they, that was the most frustrating thing because they couldn't get anything resolved. And then, they had people where there were some projects where maybe only 1 or 2 people were doing the work and there was 5 people. And so, yeah, just trying to find those different ways to resolve it and work within those, to work on it so the students can get the work in, but they also learn these other skills that can be beneficial long term. And again, if we can provide relevance, this is why we do this.
I know it's a thorny issue, like in a business school, that's really common in group work. And I've talked to a couple people who have, sounds like they have, some pretty smart ways of dealing with, what's the word, use in economics, the free rider problem.
Right.
But
there are some ways.
The norm is just like, oh, everybody says how much everyone contributed. And group of 5, it's always miraculously 20% each. There's sort of a code, that
there can be too.
There's really no reward for honesty here. We all work 25%, that person didn't do anything. Unless that person just doesn't show up or somehow is obnoxious.
Right, and I think some of that goes, and I'm going to speculate here, but I'm guessing some of that may go back to the fact that because students have experienced with working that way, that they just assume that, it doesn't matter, it's not going to get resolved. And I know some of our School of Business faculty, they've written on the concept of group work more in the face-to-face realm, not in the online realm, because I did come across articles, particularly there was one article I did read because I thought it was helpful, which was Barry Friedman, Pam Cox, and Larry Mahar. So I'll find that because I'm sure I have it in my list of ones, but they're talking face-to-face, and I think there was another one too I had found.
So this is a published article?
Yes, it is a published article. Just so you know too, Rich, I have all of my references at the end of this, so they're part of my presentation. So there's things in there you'll be able to go and draw onto and see what I found.
Yeah, I had 2 things in mind that I hadn't done before with this.
Okay.
That I think should help. One is they're going to do a lot of the group work in class. They don't
and that's a
class.
great way
That's
to do
one
it.
place where everybody is. Some students don't come to class, and the fact that there's a group isn't. Some students don't come; they do not respond to what things that incentivize other people. So yeah, if someone's missing half the classes, they're getting a very low score on the group work.
Right.
Regardless of what they're.
Because it allows you then to observe as well.
Yeah. And I was also going to use. It's basically a written assignment. Google Documents, because that way, because everything comes in a different font for every writer. If someone didn't contribute anything to the document,
you can see
it's not going to be credible. Like, oh, well, we were talking to them, and they had lots of good ideas. They tend to protect each other. It's
they can
sort
absolutely.
of a fraternal code. But I have to see something tangible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's actually what this is talking about here too, those checkpoints, those milestones.
Okay.
Short assignments that let you know how the project is progressing. It's a great place too for issues to be brought up, so they can talk about here's where we are, here's what's coming next, here's some issues we have run into. We've been able to resolve this one, but however, instructor, could you help us deal with this one because we're really struggling with this. I think those kinds of check-in points, we have them in the real world. I mean, just like when we work with faculty to do course development, we have those check-in points. So it's the same principle. And then even with these things too, sometimes new unique problems come up, and so you could just create a course announcement or add to some kind of a document or something saying, hey, we just ran into this problem. Here's how we resolved it for this situation. However, another situation may resolve differently. But it can give them something tangible to look at and be able to say, oh, okay, all right, guys, let's try this to see if we can get Joe to participate. And again, with these checking points too, obviously it's a place where your students can ask questions. So I'm going to go back to the technology tools, because these are things I tell faculty, regardless if they're doing group work or not, because I'm looking at too, how are our students supported? So we encourage I'm encouraging tools that they may already know or that the institution has supports in place. So we're Google Canvas. Our CTS Help Desk will support Google, will support Microsoft. All right, so, and then don't forget too, we have Office 365. So there's some different ways for students to get support through that place. We also have Hangouts. So that's a way for them where they can meet virtually face-to-face. In Blackboard, we have Collaborate. So again, another video conferencing tool that is supported by OpenSUNY. I mean, you can certainly have students use whatever tool you want, but if you don't want to be their tech support, then I would encourage you to use the tools that are already supported by the institution. And those are some of the things we do. We can also provide ideas and suggestions as tools you're familiar with, and may have supports that are well written, a series of well written FAQs, such as YouTube videos. One of the things I'm working with some faculty right now to encourage students to create like video introductions to their online course. So when we do like the icebreaker, encourage them to do that using simple technology, whatever's on their phone, uploading it to YouTube, because now YouTube is part of our ED package, and they can upload that and they can just provide the link in the discussion forum. And that can do other things too that we're not talking about here, but building a sense of community. And again, if you're doing groups, that's a great way to, again, start building that sense of community with your students, with each other, and with you as the instructor. So this was something I added a while ago, and I never went back and revisited it, but I need to. It's called No Jeopardy Group Work. This was from, I saw in an article from, he's in Idaho, I think. Yeah, I can't remember I remember his first name, his last name is eluding me, but the concept of no jeopardy is that if you have somebody who's not contributing, that whole section of the paper is not done, or that whole section of the project is not done, and that's on them. It's another way to look at it too. I don't think there's a right or wrong way. I think it's what you're comfortable with as an instructor and what benefits the students the most. But I think some of the things that is really helpful to them is understanding the relevance of why group work is important. And I think that's one of the things none of us do well. Like, why is this helpful? Why should we do this? So at this point, we can talk about some different ideas and suggestions, but yeah, this is just part of it. Lowenthal, Patrick Lowenthal, he was the one who I said the no jeopardy group work. It's a different way of looking at it.
Why is it called no jeopardy?
Because it's no jeopardy to the other students in the group. It's just jeopardy to the one.
It has something to do with the TV show.
No, but
category questions that goes unanswered.
It could very well be. I mean, that's something with some of the stuff I read from Patrick. He brings in a lot of this, the currency and things that are going on in the world or in the in the field or those memes or what have you. He seems to bring those in too, which help again with that concept of relevance, which has been one of my big things.
I kind of want there to be a little bit of jeopardy. Because if you've got somebody who's not, you'd say you got a group of 5, the 5th person is just not that strong, but they're not a complete idiot either. The other 4 could just, kind of cut that person out and say, well, this person really doesn't add anything. We'll do a perfectly good paper on our own. And that person is really just it's kind of an endogenous thing.
Yeah.
And once you don't show up, yeah, they shouldn't get
Right,
credit.
but you have
You
that.
want to try to bring people on board. I think that's part of being a team.
Right, and I think again too, I mean, thinking about those other skills that working in a team can, bringing on things like being a leader.
Mm-hmm.
Being a leader means bringing in all of the interested parties, if they're willing to participate. So if you have somebody who may not be that strong in that area, this is their opportunity. They may not realize it, but as the team leader, it's like, okay, we still need them to participate. We still need them to do this. And again, part of the skills inventory can kind of help the team figure that out as a team, not just the project manager.
I mean, I'm thinking between the attendance, taking attendance and doing Google Docs, I should be able to tell from who's there and from the color of the fonts, who's contributing and who isn't.
And I think that's
if the final, I know the students, I end up doing everything. I'm a good student. Our group gets an A, but I'm the only who did anything. That's obviously still you're judged what the group does.
right.
You know, when our department does its self-study, if only one person does anything, it's still the department's self-study.
That's right. That's right. I agree.
Yeah.
So those are right, and these were some of the other ones that I had too.
So I want there to be some incentive to bring everybody on board, and everybody should have something to contribute.
Right. And you can use some of these some of the different things that are out there too. Like you could certainly, that article on couch potatoes and the hitchhiker.
Mm-hmm.
I think that can be really helpful. And again, it's written in for the undergraduate, I think. And I think it's amusing, but I think they can relate to it in a variety of ways.
Mm-hmm.
So they at least say, oh, I see what's happening. It's like, oh, so-and-so is a couch potato or so-and-so is a hitchhiker or what have you. I think that can be helpful. I think some of the other things that I have found with some of the feedback I've gotten from different faculty, not only here, but in other places, was explaining to students or providing some information to students on that team formation process, the forming, norming, storming, performing.
Mm-hmm.
Those are really helpful because when they get to that point where they're having conflict, they think they're dysfunctional and they're perfectly functional because it's normal to have that kind of disagreement. And I think those are things that can be really helpful to for students to know that.
No Jeopardy thing. I mean, I'll take a look at it. It just seems hard to do, especially if I'm having them write, paragraphs that are coherent and so forth.
Right.
It's like, well, we're missing this part of the paragraph.
Right.
So
no. I think
the
way Patrick was looking at it was more large sections.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think little pieces. I think it was more the larger sections.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll go back. I can probably find it pretty quickly where in that article, because it was a kind of a longer article that Patrick wrote. And we actually used it for another presentation as well, because it was it talked about a lot of different things. And this was just like maybe a paragraph or two where he talked about the no Jeopardy. And it was I just thought it was something interesting and it was worth being brought out in the sense of, some faculty some do that similar things. But in some of the places I talked with faculty throughout, particularly in the state, because particularly some nursing schools, it was really interesting to how they were doing group work and stuff like that. So it was really, really helpful, and really was a lot of conversation, and it was a lot of encouragement to keep digging into this topic, because there is research out there, but not as much at the undergraduate level, which I think is, I think we really need to look at, because that's where they're starting. So it makes me wonder, okay, how much of that, what do they do in K-12 high school? Maybe that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And maybe it just matters what happens when we get them here. And I mean that at any institution. So those are just some different things I found that can be helpful. So one of the things I'm hopefully going to do in the fall with one of our faculty is actually start putting some of these things into an actual online course to see what happens. Because I have a faculty member who's interested, and I'm like, yes. Well, it's been one of my research interests. I may very well focus on that as part of my dissertation. I'm not sure.
Mhm.
But I see that how relevant it can be to our students, to any student, because these skills that they are learning, these soft skills that they're learning, and in some cases the hard skills, only benefit them in how our world is changing. So I think it helps them, because especially if they can do it virtually, I think that provides them a little bit more experience, because we are working with teams virtually. I mean, just think about what we do in Zoom. We're working with people all over the place. We have Naja on Zoom with us, so we can participate that way as well. So,
I totally agree, and I have been a person who's experienced the group work virtually through distance learning, and it's actually created great partnerships and networking skills as well. That is part of the real world right now, as we're becoming more global through social media and other technologies, that we're able to connect with individuals, around the globe, and we collaborate together on different projects. So our students, at first, it takes time for them to understand. I think part of it is that undergraduate maturity level for them to understand that, we're beyond high school now, and giving them maybe some interpersonal or interprofessional work with others around the globe as well, or around the nation even, or locally. And this could also apply to students who are in the classroom and are not online students as well, having them do some interprofessional work with others, so that they can get a feel. They may not like it at first, but later on they will come to understand the importance of it.
right.
My only question is, and I was wondering about this, because with one of the group works that I have right now, the students are going to have a peer evaluation, but I'm grading the students who are the evaluators only for participation purposes. I'm having a grade, but that evaluation will not influence their peers' work. However, I'm wondering if the evaluations should be taken into consideration.
Yeah, and I've gotten that question before, and it really depends on the instructor. I will tell you this again, and my experience in group work, my personal experience, is at the graduate level, so I want to make sure I'm clear with that. In the case of the project, actually I was taking a project management course online, which is part of an instructional design program, because every course we do is a project. So he took those into consideration because, again, looking at things from a real world perspective, there has to be some consequence. But again, every time, if you do it multiple times at various checkpoints, things seem to even out. Because at some point, and again, thinking of it from a graduate student perspective, life happens. And it happens for our undergrads as well. So it's thinking about, okay, looking at it very holistically as opposed to just that specific snapshot. But again, it's a point for you as an instructor to perhaps reach out to a student and say, hey, what's up? What's going on? Just in the sense, especially an undergraduate, your group is saying to me that you're not participating. Is something wrong? Is something, and maybe mom's in the hospital and the student just isn't comfortable revealing that, but being that you come to them, they're okay with it. So I think it's really situational, Naja.
One more question. So you mentioned the YouTube for icebreakers, for example.
Uh-huh.
And I thought that was pretty interesting. But am I correct to understand that, maybe I'm wrong with this, or I'm just over understanding, is that do the those icebreakers, do they have to have captions with them?
Well, YouTube will do that.
Okay.
YouTube will do the captioning. I'm hearing a variety of percentages of accuracy. It can be anywhere between 80 and 90% or higher accurate. So yeah, and again, when you're thinking about student work, because that's another part of the whole accessibility initiative here at Oswego, we have to be very cognizant of that. Okay, how do we how do we as educators create accessible content? And then how do we demonstrate that, and how do we show our students how to create accessible content? So it's thinking about it from the concept of, okay, let's get them used to it in this kind of a situation. And then let's show them the tools that are there. But yes, we can at least encourage them to enable the caption when they submit the assignment. And then it, sometimes it can be really, really funny because, sometimes the captioning isn't as accurate as it should be. And they may want to then, again, just finding ways to engage them in that. They may want to do that change. I really need to fix this captioning, and there are some, there's some YouTube videos, again, that can tell them how to do it through YouTube. Naja just asked about using YouTube for like students to do introductions, and she's asking about closed caption. Because of ADA.
Right.
So, and YouTube will caption, and I'm hearing different levels of accuracy. In Princeton, John Kane is pretty happy with it. It's like well over 90% accurate. Where it may not be as accurate as could be in areas of discipline-specific vocabulary. Sometimes that is, or if somebody has a very thick accent, sometimes it's not as accurate. So, Naja, to answer your question, I think it's really up to you how you want to do that. And again, as we're looking to be more diverse as an institution, and we're looking to be more inclusive, those are things that faculty could add by just saying, turn on the closed captioning. And then seeing what happens with that, or saying, turn on the closed captioning, here's a video you can use to edit your closed captioning if it's that bad, or something like that.
That last one there was interesting. So, teamwork alive.
Yeah, back.
Sure.
Yeah, that's an interesting one too. Actually,
I'm not sure if we have it says from a student collaboration classroom. Is that a book?
No.
Is that an edited collection?
I believe so. I found it online.
Oh, you found the whole article online?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I did. Let me see if I can find my source. For me, one of the ones, okay, just so you know, that one about the hitchhikers, couch visit, that was written by Barbara Oakley. Barbara Oakley was the keynote speaker at CIT last year.
Okay.
So that was the one that I found very helpful for me as an instructional designer was the Posey Lyons article in the Instructional Design's Online Collaborative Learning. That was really helpful to me to reshape and rethink how I can help faculty in this role in creating online group work if they wish to go there. But yeah, I'm going to say I pretty much found all of these through either our library or online.
Okay.
They were pretty easy to find. I'm not sure about the Lowenthal article, but I know I have it, so I can always find it. The Ekbala article was also really good. He was at Hudson Valley Community College, and that article, if I remember correctly, that was a really good article because it was much more succinct than many of the others. Yeah, so I mean, they all were helpful to me, and like I said, this is not anywhere near an exhaustive lit review. If I keep going this route, yeah, it's going to have to be much more deeper dive. So, anybody else have questions? I saw you're there, Michelle. Thank you for coming. All right, if anybody has questions or wants to know more, feel free again to use the bit.ly. You can always email me and I can send you that link as well. I'm also happy to answer questions or to collaborate with you to figure out how we might do this in any of your courses.